Nicole O'Neill once said, when you find the courage to use your voice, it has the power to positively inspire and change the lives of others. It is one of the special gifts you have to offer the world. It is something to be cherished and championed, never hidden. And that is why we are here on Your Voice, Your Impact. I am the energetic EJ. I am a life and transformational coach, and I work with women aged 40 and above to turn their abandoned dreams into achievable goals by activating their voice for impact. I'm also a podcaster and an event host. On this show with me is
Great, so amazing. The goal of this show is to help people use their voices to create impact. I am a physicist and a life coach. What I do for my clients is I help them build systems to achieve their goals whilst having fun doing it. On this show, we discuss topical issues that can inspire you to move. Like, subscribe, and share. Welcome aboard.
I love it. Soma on tape is on point. It's like, yes, I'm the first to comment. Like, I am here. In case you can't see me, I am here. I love it, love it, love it. Man, okay. This is proof that Anna has got a great community. I love it. Welcome to another episode on Your Voice, Your Impact. This is the energetic EJ, and I'm super excited to be here again today. Now, the thing today's a special one. My second half is not here. My better half, my partner in growth and impact, is not here with me today because she's currently writing an exam. So please, if you could just take a second to just wish her, success in her exams, I would appreciate that. Right? So yes, please calm down, Daniel. You people are making me jealous. What is this? You people are making me jealous. Well, Gracie won't be joining us today, so it's just going to be me and our guest on the show today. I'm so excited about today's episode. So, welcome to another inspiring conversation on Your Voice, Your Impact show. I truly am excited about today's episode because we're diving into a very interesting topic, one that we all need. It touches every part of our lives, our relationship, our careers. Everybody needs this in their lives. So joining me in this incredible conversation is Ana Chioma Esimone, right? She is a transformational life coach, founder of Thoughts and Words by Anna, and a woman deeply passionate about helping people build confidence, heal from self-doubt, and step into their best selves. If you've ever struggled with saying no, felt guilty for protecting your peace, or if you're wondered, or you have this, just this unease of setting limits without, and you want to set those limits without losing the connections of those you love, because sometimes, the topic we want to talk about, people can easily misunderstand or misinterpret it. And so if you struggle with that, then this particular episode is for you. So I want you to be ready. I'm loving that Anna's community is already set and they're like, we can't wait, please bring her on, bring her on, bring her on. Look at that, like as if I knew. Like, Anna. All right. Yay. Okay. I have my community member on Instagram, Justina Oladoyin. I see you. Thank you so much for joining. Yes, sadly, Instagram comments can't come into the studio, so I can't put it on the screen, but I see you. I celebrate you. Thank you for being here. And if anyone is also on LinkedIn at this point, thank you for joining us. Please feel free to leave a comment, and hopefully we're going to see it in the studio and I can also acknowledge you. But if I don't see it, it's because if I don't acknowledge it openly, it's because I'm not seeing it in the studio. But be rest assured that I am going to respond to your comment on LinkedIn after the show. But please, let's be a part of the conversation as much as we can. Without further ado, I'm going to bring on our guest and we're going to dive right into the conversation of the day. Hello, Anna. How are you doing today?
Hello, hi, energetic EJ. I love the energy you brought into this episode today. Hello, everyone. I am doing very well. I'm very excited, very honored to be here, and I'm looking forward to the conversation we'll be having today because, like you said, it's a very, very important one for every single person.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more with you. And I am as excited as you are to dive into the conversation. But before we do that, I'm curious to know when you named your brand Thoughts and Words by Anna, what was that about? Let's go there before we then go into the conversation of the day.
Okay. This is a very interesting story because when I remember how the name came about, it wasn't something I planned or thought of deeply. Prior to it being Thoughts and Words by Anna, I was putting out, clips and write-ups on Instagram, and I called it I think Motivation by Anna. I can't remember, but something motivation. But I didn't feel like it captured everything about what I do and what I stand for. And so one day I'm a Christian, right? And I was praying about it and I went to bed. I knew I wanted a rebrand. I knew I wanted something to really speak into what I believe in and what I do. And so I prayed about it and I went to bed and I woke up. And I kid you not, these words came into my head, thoughts and words. And like I said, there wasn't any meaning to it. I said, okay, you know what? We are just going to have the name. And I ran with it. And that's how it started. But along the line, years went by, and I'm very big on, our thoughts. And if anyone that knows my story, I talk about how when I was young, I had very, negative beliefs of myself, and it started with my thoughts. And even when I speak about myself, I'll speak about myself negatively. And so I decided to do, more work about the mind and, the power of our words. And when I thought about it, I realized that there was a reason why God gave me this name, because a lot of things starts with our thoughts and then translates to our words, the things we say. And then I even have my community name is called Thoughts, Words, and Works, and then to our actions. So when I started doing more work on it, that was when I understood the importance and the power of the name Thoughts and Words. And I think it just came to me the way it did because that was what God knew would be, like I said, would capture everything that I do and I believe in. So yeah, I enjoy the name when I think about it. Thoughts and words. Yes, thoughts and words. So that's how it came about.
I love it. Very inspired. It was an inspired name, and it truly carries the inspiration that is behind it. Thoughts and words. Yes. So Ma on tape says thought and words is perfect. I am glad God placed the idea in your mind and heart. Thank you so much on tape for that affirmation. Okay, now let's dive right into the conversation of the day. By the way, if in case you missed the post before now and you're not seeing the topic for today is setting boundaries for optimal relationships, right? Setting boundaries for optimal relationships. Now, I'm going to start, just dive right in. Like I'm taking you to the middle of the pool straight away. I hope you can swim. Are you ready to swim?
I'm ready. I'm actually a good swimmer.
Ah, nice. Flesh and blood did not reveal that to me. All right. So your work focuses on helping people overcome self doubt and build confidence. When was the first time that you personally realized the importance of setting healthy boundaries in your own life? And how did that shift that impact personally to what you then do to help people today around what you do?
Okay, that's a very good question. So I said this a little bit when I was explaining how my name came about. I struggled with self-esteem when I was younger for many years of my life. And one thing I know was that affected how I showed up in relationships. It affected the kind of relationships I put myself into. And I would, accept certain things and I wouldn't speak up about it, even though I knew it didn't feel good to me. And so this was the way I lived my life for years. But when I decided to start my, self-confidence journey, because I woke up one day and I decided this is not how I want my life to be. I don't want to feel terrible all the time. I don't want to feel like I'm in relationships with people who, one, don't respect me because I don't even respect myself. So when I started putting in the work to build my confidence, I got to learn that key factor that would bring me to a place of security with my own self and then with the relationships I'm in was boundaries. And I noticed that this wasn't a conversation that people talk about often. And when people even hear the word boundaries, there's this negative connotation to it. They make it feel like, I mean, if you say something's a boundary, it's like there's a barrier. So it made it sound you're blocking exactly relationships out of your life. But I got to learn that that isn't what a boundary means, and which would get into, hopefully, boundary is more about what you do your own self to keep yourself secure within the relationship. And so I would say it started 2020 around COVID, because I think, us being shut down got me to really do a lot of self-reflection. I'm like, okay, so if this is how the world will end, is this everything there is to it? I'm not even happy with where I am. I'm not happy with my life. I'm not content with my relationships. I don't like how I feel about myself. I don't want this. I don't want this. And so I think that time alone allowed me to really think and reflect on how I want to be moving forward. So from 2020, I became very intentional with how I shop for myself and, within the relationships I have in my life. So that was when it started for me, 2020 COVID.
Honestly, see, I couldn't stop smiling because again, 2020 was such a significant year for a lot
Mm,
of people. And I would say that was when my own journey, into the world of coaching, self-development. Like I've always been on the journey of personal development, but the depth of which, it took a turn was in 2020. Like you said, hey, is this also life? Okay, if this is
mhm.
not all, well, better sit up. Like you can't keep, you know, doing the same thing and expecting a different result. Something has got to shift, something has got to give. And, for me as well, it was that period. So I could resonate with you when you said, you know what, we have to change. I cannot just continue like this. And I think that's quite interesting. And I love how you responded because it ties smoothly into my next question for you, which is on the topic of boundaries. Now, a lot of people confuse boundaries with building walls or like we said, it's a no sign, don't come near me kind of, signage, like pushing others away. From your own perspective, what are the key differences and how can we set boundaries that strengthen, not damage our relationship? What's the difference between keeping people off and boundaries? Because I feel like the literal meaning of boundaries maybe cause that stiff interpretation in people. So how do we differentiate setting healthy boundaries in relationship such that it doesn't damage the relationships that we're trying to keep?
Okay. So I think the first thing to do is even properly define boundaries, because that would make people reframe their mind when it comes to setting boundaries. Like you said, when we talk about boundaries, we think about a wall, we think about blocking people off. But what I like to say boundaries are, they are not rules, or they're not rules to govern or dictate how someone else acts. They are
Hmm.
rules, or rather, they are guidelines to dictate how you choose to show up in a
Love
relationship.
it.
So
Hmm.
when we talk about boundaries, people think, oh, what I tell people that they should do so that the relationship is good. No, it's how you're going to show up, what you're going to do or not to do to keep that
Hmm.
relationship secure. So once you
Hmm.
start pointing, if you start putting the responsibility on the other person to uphold the boundary, then you're going to have, a friction in the relationship. Meanwhile,
Hmm.
you should be the person that would uphold your own boundary. And so talking about, the difference between knowing when you're putting up a strong wall
Healthy. Hmm.
or a healthy boundary. So there are three major types of boundaries. We have flexible boundary, we have
Hmm.
rigid boundary, we had, okay, no, flexible, or rather, okay, let me say porous. We have porous boundaries, we have rigid boundaries, and we have secure boundaries, healthy boundaries. So let me just touch on them a little bit. So, like the name implies, porous, something that can seep through. So if you have a porous boundary, you're not firm. You People get away with anything, and you just allow people. I don't want to say allow people do things, but you don't show up in a way that you feel secure in the relationship. So you don't have strong boundaries. When you have rigid boundaries, you have put up a wall. And that is also not a good thing. Some people feel, okay, because they say I'm not able to stand up for myself, they then do certain things that will shut out relationships entirely. That's still insecure boundaries. So insecure is porous and rigid. And then healthy boundaries, these are things that you do within the relationship to keep that relationship secure, so that both parties feel like their needs are being met within the relationship. Because again, it takes two to tango. You have to also be considerate of the other person's feelings. There are things you might want for yourself, the other person might not be able to, you know, do, they can't show up in that way. So how are you going to show up to meet in the middle so that both of you feel like your needs are being met? So there are lots of things when we talk about boundaries, but it's, I want everyone to have at the back of their mind that it is not what the other person does, or it's not what you tell the other person to do, but it's how you do things to show up or not show up. So let me give an example, right? A basic one. When people say, okay, I can say my boundary, or my rule is I don't want calls past 9 p.m. So after 9 p.m., don't call me. That's a rule. A boundary would be, if someone then does call you past 9 p.m., what do you do? Do you pick up the call, or do you let the call ring and then get back to them at the time that would feel comfortable for you? And I think the problem with people, the problem with setting boundaries that people have is they overthink the reactions of the other person. So they feel they don't want to hurt the other person's feelings. And these are for people who have porous boundaries. So that's where people pleasing comes into play. They don't want to. Oh, I think can anyone hear me? I think network kicked her. I don't know if it's my network. Can anyone hear me? Oh, you can hear me. Okay. Maybe I'll just wait for her to come in. Oh, thank you guys. Hi, Ufa. Hi, Daniel. Hi, Soma. I don't know if any other person is here because the comments on my side are limited, but hi, everyone. Okay. Okay, let's just wait a bit for her to come back so that we'll continue the conversation. Okay, she'll be joining soon. Thank you. Also, if you have any questions, you can leave them in the comment section so that by the time she comes back, I could also respond to some of them. Apologies for the delay. Her system rebooted, so she'll be joining us soon. Okay, there's a question. Oh, she's back. How do you approach evaluating boundaries?
Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can. Can you hear me?
Can you hear me? Am I
Yes,
am I
perfectly.
back? Can
Yes,
you hear
can
me
you hear me?
now? Please reduce that.
Can you hear
Okay.
me?
Yes, I can. I am so sorry about a restart of it.
No problem. But can you hear me
Can you hear me
clearly?
still? Okay. Yes, I can. Yes, I can.
Okay,
I am
likewise.
so sorry, guys.
Okay,
Okay. I think it's back. I hope. I think the system is still a bit slow, but if you can hear me, that's good. Am I still frozen? I feel
no,
like I'm
you're not.
frozen.
Not from my
I'm
end.
not.
Yeah.
Okay. Please mute. Okay. Thank you. All right. Thank you so much. Thank you for, holding on. I am so sorry about that. That was just tech doing its thing. Okay. So you were explaining something before I went off.
Yes. I was giving an
Yes.
example of,
Example. Yes.
a boundary. So some people would say, don't call me past 9 p.m. That's a rule, not a boundary. It's fine to set rules. There are things to say, okay, I don't want calls past 9 p.m. But what is a boundary? When someone then calls you past 9 p.m., what do you do? Do you complain, but I told this person not to call me past 9 p.m. and then you pick up the call? That person wouldn't respect your boundaries moving forward because even you didn't respect your boundary. So you see, it's not for them to uphold, it's for you to uphold. So setting the boundary would be not picking the call. And the reason why people struggle to uphold their boundaries is because of, people pleasing. And here's where porous boundaries come into play, where people think, oh, I don't want to hurt that person's feelings. If I don't pick the call, they will think I'm mean or they will think whatever. But the moment you allow yourself to release, expectations of people on you, it will be easier for you to set a boundary and stick to it. So when it comes to certain things you want for yourself, instead of saying, I told this person to do this, ask yourself, what role am I going to play to keep this boundary for myself? So that's why I like to say boundaries are not rules to dictate people's actions, but how you choose to show up within the relationship. And so talking about even, different ways that there are different ways people would react to, oh, my audio is breaking.
Yeah, it was breaking when you were explaining initially, but I think it's better now. I think it's better
Okay.
now.
Okay. Okay. So yeah, I was talking about, people have to start getting comfortable
Please
with
go
the
ahead. Yeah.
reactions they get from boundaries because if you don't, that's where people pleasing comes into play and you would never set a boundary because you're thinking about what would the person think. There are 6 different ways that people respond to boundaries. First, it could be withdrawal. If you tell someone, oh, this is my, or rather you communicate to them. And another thing you also need to know is communication plays a big role. You can't expect someone to know something they don't know. And also when they do those things, how do you react? So that, how do you respond? Those are the 2 things when it comes to boundary. Do you communicate it and do you uphold it for your own self? So when you have communicated this boundary and someone chooses to, react in a certain way, which one of them is withdrawal, what do you do? There are people that withdraw. Oh, I can't believe you said this. That means you don't want to be my friend or you don't want us to be close, and they would withdraw. That's one way. Another one could be pushback. There are certain people that would, want to test your limits. So if you tell them, oh, don't call past 9 p.m., they wouldn't call today, but they may call tomorrow or they may call the following week. And to you, you tell yourself, okay, well, I mean, they did not call me one day, so let me just allow them. You are now disrespecting your own boundary. You are allowing them test your limits. There are people that will do that. Another one is denial. People are in outright denial. I can't believe they said this. I can't believe she could say that to me. And this is especially when it comes to one, people you have had close relationships with, and you have maybe you didn't have this boundary in the past, but you have put it up now. Then they would be in denial. I can't believe you tell this to me. It has never been this way. This is not how our relationship has been. They're in denial, but you have to enforce that boundary and you have to uphold it. Another one is verbal abuse. There are some people that can, use name calling to guilt trip you. Oh, so now you think you are this because of, oh, so they would say certain things to you that will make you feel maybe I shouldn't have done this. Maybe this isn't a boundary I should have put up. But these are, negative responses to boundary setting. But one thing I also like to tell people is there are people who would be respectful. There are people who would accept. So the last response to a boundary is acceptance. There are actually people who can say, okay, I understand this, I respect it, and I would let it. So when you, oh, okay, someone said my voice is breaking.
Yes, at some point, I wasn't sure if it was just me, but I wanted you to land because you were highlighting the 6 responses to boundary, correct? Can you hear me? Okay, so now I think your audio is gone or your network is shaky. So please, if you can still hear me, and you type in
Okay,
the comment, let me know. Okay,
I
I
can
can
hear you
hear you
now.
now.
Is it breaking
Okay,
still?
so I think it's a little bit better now, but I think you were highlighting the 6 responses to boundaries, right?
Yes.
Yes, but I could only pick the last three, which was denial, verbal abuse, and acceptance. The first three, I think it was breaking in and out. So maybe you could take those first three again.
Okay, so I said withdrawal. There are people that would withdraw.
Throw up.
There's
Okay.
denial. Then there are pushbacks. People who would want to
Mm,
test your limits. Then there are people who would, verbally abuse you or name call you to guilt trip you. Then I forgot one more before the acceptance, which is exit. There are people that would terminate
exit.
that relationship. Yes, they would
Right.
they will tell you, no, I don't want this. And that's the end of the relationship.
That's
And
it.
that's the very, very painful one. And there are ways to get through with that. But apart from this five, the last one is acceptance. So there are people
Acceptance.
that
Right.
would accept and respect your relationship and your boundaries. And it's very important to, build relationships with people that accept your boundaries, because it would also let you know
Mm,
that boundaries are healthy. And one other thing
right.
that I also want
Right.
people to have in mind when it comes to respecting boundaries, you can't expect someone to respect your own boundaries when you don't respect theirs. So again, it
Mm.
takes two to tango.
Right, right. I love it. I love it. And I think essentially one of the things I'm taking away from what you've shared so far is the responsibility that it places on the person setting the boundaries, and knowing that the boundaries you're setting is not for others, it's for how you operate. So it's almost like seeing it as my modus operandi. So this is how I operate, whether come rain come is for me. So if you want to be in my space, you need to respect that boundary. But it's not something I am dictating to you to, enforce on you. But I feel like, with the way you said it now, it makes it like, see, if you respect me enough, or if you really want this relationship, you would respect those boundaries, and you would let our relationships, be around, be guided by those boundaries. And I love, 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 love it. Thank you for highlighting the 6 responses. And I think those are very powerful for people to understand, so that they don't fall into the guilt. Because I think that's another thing, when the responses come, then people start to break their own boundaries or start to shift the goalposts to say, maybe I shouldn't have done that. Like you said, oh, maybe I shouldn't have told her that what she said hurts me. Okay, but that's not healthy, because then you keep piling up these things and it's going to erupt someday. And then it's a very tiny thing that would erupt it. And people will be like, what did she do? Just this tiny thing and you are exploding. No, it's not that tiny thing that made it explode. It's a combination of different things that has happened building up onto that moment. So this is why it's very, very important to set those healthy boundaries. I would love for us to take the questions. In the question, there's a question in the comment section. I think you touched on it, but I want you to elaborate on it a little bit more for Daniel. Daniel is saying, how do you approach re-evaluating boundaries when you're trying to come outside your comfort zone for new relationship and experiences? And I like this one. Please, what do you say about this?
Okay, that's a very good question. So, when we talk about boundaries, let's go back to the definition. It's not a rule or a guideline for how someone should act. It's how, what you choose to do or not do to feel secure in your relationship. And one thing we also need to know about boundary, it is personal and it is unique to the relationship. A lot of people want to give one particular boundary to every single person they are in any form of relationship with to uphold. And that is not realistic. There are people who are, when it comes to, for example, me, when it comes to texting, there are people who are low maintenance and they don't necessarily require that constant communication with people. And so if they enter a relationship with someone who is high maintenance, you have to reevaluate that boundary. You cannot approach that relationship using the same boundary one you would even have for yourself or you would have for the previous relationships in your life, because that particular relationship wouldn't, succeed. It wouldn't be a healthy relationship. So you can be guilty of saying, oh, but everybody in my past respected this, but this is a different person. So you have to put the relationship into consideration, the relationship and the person you are in that relationship with into consideration. So you cannot generalize a boundary. And also, like I said, it takes two to tango. You have to respect the person's boundary. So you also should be able to ask the person, what do they need that would help them feel secure in the relationship? So when you have that communication, you're bridging the gap and you're building a platform where both of your needs are being met in the relationship. And you also have to have it at the back of your mind that there will be a certain level of compromise that would need to happen. Let's say again back to the low maintenance and high maintenance friendship. So you are a low maintenance person and all your friends in your life are low maintenance, and then you have a new relationship where the person is more high maintenance. They need you to, check in on them more frequently. How are you going to go about that? Are you going to tell yourself, well, no, this is who I am, this is the kind of person I am, they have to stick with it? No. You have to be able to meet in the middle. Okay, what would you like? What would you want? Okay, maybe I would want you to reach out to me every day. And you say, okay, maybe every day might not be feasible. Can we do 3 times a week? Or if you want every day, okay, they'll tell you, oh, text me. There are people who want you to be on the phone with them all the time. Okay, you know what? I can text you in the morning and in the evening to check up on you. And that, there's a compromise. For you, you're even stretching yourself because that's not something you do. And for them, they're also stretching themselves because that's not something they would do. They would want constant communication. So you see, there's that level of compromise. So you also need to remember that one, each individual is unique. So whenever you want to approach a relationship, find out what they require as much as you would also like things that you would require within that relationship.
I love it. Daniel, I hope that has answered your question. And I think that's such a beautiful answer to that question. One of the things that is coming up for me as we talk about this boundary thing is communication. Like, I know that communication is the life wire to any kind of relationship. And this, conversation is solidifying that notion to say that even with the boundaries, you need to communicate it. You need to come to a compromise. You need to talk about it and be clear on it. Like I said earlier on, you cannot read minds. So you don't expect somebody to respect a boundary that you have not set, that you've not spoken about. And I think one of the things that people struggle with is actually even talking about it in the first place. People are a bit uncomfortable having that conversation, like how do I even tender this matter? I don't want to hurt people. And it's an easy thing for people pleaser, coming from a repentant people pleaser. It's very difficult, like, well, how do I tender this conversation? But it is important, and especially if that relationship is quite important to you. What are some subtle signs that someone might be struggling? I think I just mentioned some, but from your own experience as a coach who really digs deeper into this, what are some, signs that someone might be struggling with poor boundaries, especially now, let's broaden it a little bit, in workplace as well as in relationship. Do you see? Because sometimes
Mhm.
we are fixated on, when we hear relationship, we're already thinking, okay, my second half or whatever, whatever. But see, there's friendship, there's the relationship, the romantic one, but there's also work relationship, right? How can somebody who is already struggling with poor boundaries, how can they know? What are some subtle signs that can help them tell, that they are already in that, they've crossed that line of unhealthy boundaries?
This is such a very, very good question and one that needs to be had. And I like that we're talking about even boundaries in the workplace because I think there are two, aside from friendship, there are two major, you know, types of relationships that people struggle setting boundaries: family and then work. Because there's a level of for some superiority inferiority type of relationship, and even if it's co-worker or siblings, so there's a level of familiarity and unfamiliarity in that kind of space. So when people want to do things, it's like, I don't think this is the right thing to do or say in this situation. So when it comes to boundaries in the workplace, one major sign could be unhappiness. Let's start with that. Unhappiness, because first of all, you wouldn't even be feeling happy where you are in the relationship. You wouldn't be happy with your boss. You're not even looking forward to going to work. Sometimes, and that's why I say boundaries are the, building, I believe they are the building block of relationships. Because a lot of things that we struggle with, poor boundaries. If you are feeling overwhelmed with work, you might probably have poor time boundaries. If you feel like you don't have a good relationship with money, you probably have poor financial boundaries. So a lot of things, boundaries are the root cause of it. So when it comes to work, how do you show up? Are you happy? Are you looking forward to going to work? And there's this saying people say, I remember someone asked me a question one time, oh, do you love your work? I asked someone, do you love your work? And I said, does anybody ever? And I said, oh, that's a very interesting because I love mine. but okay. Because I've been able to show up in a way that doesn't overwhelm me. I try to be very conscious. I'm human. There are times where, a lot happens, but I have to keep myself grounded. But I'm able to identify key areas that I may not be playing roles I need to play to keep myself secure. Again, that is boundaries. I'm not playing the role. So let me give an example. Aside from unhappiness, another one is burnout at work, burnout. And one reason is people take on more than they can handle. I was having a conversation with a lady a few weeks back, and she was talking to me about a problem she was having with her boss. And when she was talking, I asked her, had you communicated this? And she said, well, no, I don't want to look like I'm unserious. I'm new at work, and, they have high expectations of me. And I said, interesting. Okay, so now this is people pleasing. You don't want them to think of you in a way. But do you feel you're showing up effectively? She said, no. Why? Because she's taking on more than she can handle. So, putting up a boundary for yourself would be if someone comes to tell you, okay, this is what you need to do today, these are all the things, and then you have things on your plate. There's a way you communicate something to someone that it would even look like, okay, you're not saying, no, I cannot do this. Oh, no, this is it too much for me. You can go like, oh, I have ABC task. And if you would want me to do this task ABC effectively, I would have to focus my time on this task. So you're communicating to them that you would want because their goal is that you give them a good job. So if you know, if you take on too many things, you wouldn't even be able to do a good job. If you tell them that, they would even want to take that away from you. And so there's a way you communicate it. So it's not to say no, but if you keep silent, they're not going to stop. So again, it's what you choose to do or not to do. If you take it, you're not upholding your boundary. It's not enough to say, don't give me the work. If you take it, you're not upholding it. Rather, if you communicate to them, oh, I wouldn't be able to do this because if I do, I wouldn't do the kind of job you would like me to do. You've set a boundary, you've upheld it. And you would notice you would even feel more at ease. Again, when it comes to, let's say, boss and let me go back to colleague, because I think colleague relationship is another relationship that people have a lot of problems with, setting boundaries, where, for example, someone will come and tell you, oh, I have so and so task, I'm very busy, please can you help me do it? And because they are your very close friend, you don't want to sound mean, or maybe they're not even your close friend, you want to get in the person's good book. You will notice again a lot of things comes from not being able to, well, not knowing your voice, not being able to have that strong voice. And that's why it's very important. And one way to know your voice is to know your values. Very, very, very important. When I coach people, I try the first set of things I like to do. Let's identify your values. If your value is, honesty, when someone comes up to you in a dishonest way, because that's what you value, you communicate that with honesty. If your value is, let's say, love, for example, if someone comes up to you even in the office calling you bad names, calling you, making the workspace very difficult for you, even when you want to communicate certain things to them, you do it from a place of love. Because the moment you start to dishonor your values, you're also disrespecting your boundaries, because your values are also your boundaries. So I think there's a level of skill that comes with setting boundaries, but what builds skills is practice, constantly practicing it, trying it, communicating to the, even if people react in a way you wouldn't want them to, even if people push back, even if people name call you, even if people leave, you have to get to a point where you get comfortable with the kind of response you would get from people.
I love, 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 love it. Love it, love it, love it, love it. Wow. Thank you so much for that. And I think that's so important. You said something about the example, and I love how you're using the examples. It makes them very relatable. And I like how you've painted the one in the workplace because those are subtle. And thank you for also highlighting the subtle symptoms. I'm not happy at work. I'm feeling overwhelmed all the time. I'm not looking forward to going to that place every day. Why? What's going on? Because at the end of the day, you applied for that job, right? There was something you saw in the first place that made you apply. Even if, I know that, the job scene sometimes can be, okay, while I'm waiting for the real thing, let me go for this one. But even this one you are going for, there's something there that made you feel it's not off track or it's not all that bad. Let me just get on board. What was that thing? So if that thing is there, there should be some level of happiness while you're working towards the next one. And I think that's really important that you have highlighted that. You said something about, the workplace being that, okay, I like the example you use, which is that like a new person in a new office, you want to be in the good books, you're not sure how to handle. Sometimes you're even experiencing imposter syndrome at some point, like, okay, maybe they're looking at me this big. If I go and say this thing now, what if they now feel like, I can't really do the job? Or maybe, and that's like sometimes, like you said, it's just the lies in our head sometimes, or not being articulate about the value that we bring to the table. And so it's easy for people to sway us. So how do you, if somebody is battling imposter syndrome, they've not been able to have that strong voice or solidify their value enough to, build these boundaries. How do you see the connection between imposter syndrome and poor boundaries? How do they support each other or twin up? and what would be the first step for somebody battling both? Because I feel like that's like two-edged, two-winged, monster trying to pull you down when you don't have the strong voice, and then plus that you have some level of imposter syndrome. How would how do those two tie? But also, how would you talk to that person to take the first step to help them?
Okay, so when I spoke about my story, I talked about having low self-esteem and I noticed that affected my relationship. So like you said, they are intertwined. If you don't have a healthy view of yourself, it would even be difficult for you to communicate what you want. You don't know what you want. You don't know what you like. You don't know what you don't like. So the first step is to discover yourself. Easier said than done, but it has to happen. You have to first of all have that healthy relationship with yourself. And what is the meaning of imposter syndrome? If say somebody's an imposter, it means they are not the real thing. So again, it goes back to, how do you see yourself? If you don't see yourself as true, as authentic, it will be difficult for you to show up even authentically. It will be difficult for you to tell someone this is what I like, because you see yourself as an imposter. So the first thing would be, build that self confidence. And like I said, one key way to do that is, you know, imposter syndrome. I believe it's a lie we tell ourselves to keep ourselves comfortable. Because the moment you start to push yourself, I remember having a conversation with someone, do you have imposter syndrome? People say everybody has, but I found out that not everybody has imposter syndrome, because they have built they've built track records to show to themselves why they are not imposters. So if you're someone that struggles with imposter syndrome, build a track record. You have to start somewhere.
Like that. Hmm.
If you say you're going to do something, stick to it. So that in the future, if something else comes up, you can say, I stuck to it this last time, so I know myself and I would stick to it this time. It's
Hmm.
practice. A lot
Love
of
it.
things are practice. So if you're in that space where you feel, I can't show up, I can't communicate because I have imposter syndrome, build a track record. Know your values, know your strengths, and know your weaknesses. So that even in areas where you don't feel as strong as, these are things that you're not even ashamed of, because you are aware, and you can, bring in someone else who can, let me say, cover up your weakness. And that's the beautiful thing about workplace. I don't think everybody has the same strengths. And if everyone does, I
Hmm.
don't think that workplace will thrive.
Right.
Everybody can do the one thing. So who can do this other thing, or who can do this other thing? So when it comes to workplace and imposter syndrome, build a track record. And remember, there's a battle when it comes to the mind. Our mind is very powerful. Again, our thoughts, what we think about ourselves. You have to start to build a healthy relationship about yourself. There's when it comes to coaching, we do this. There's a step-by-step process of doing this. But I would say, take that step, invest in yourself, invest in, wake up one day and make that decision. I want better for myself. I want to have a healthy relationship with myself. I want to have a healthy view of myself. And it would now help you navigate, how you now show up in relationships in your life.
Absolutely, absolutely. And if you're not sure how to invest in yourself, like, okay, where do I start from? Coaching is a very good one. And Coach Anna is here to help you with that journey to self-discovery. And I think that's the beginning of any journey you want to be on in your life, anything you want to do. If you don't know yourself, if you don't come into a good knowledge, because I feel like at the end of the day we keep evolving as humans, and so that means you keep learning yourself, but at least you should have the basic of who you are in the core and in the principle of what guides you in life. Once you have that, then you can always adapt into every season that you get into as you evolve. Now there are some questions here in the comment. Let's take them as we go towards wrapping up this session. Ufa is asking, if someone already has strong boundary setting in a work setting and is given a task beyond the scope of what is agreed, workload wise, you state it clearly and respectfully. Continue asking if it is within the bounds of what was agreed and they see it as insubordination because they are so used to people saying yes, ma, and yes, sir. How do you navigate such environment?
Beautiful question. One thing I like to say is, many people don't believe this, but I stand by it. Everybody has a choice. Because from what you've communicated, this person has strong boundaries. Everybody has a choice. I like to say this, even when, except, okay, this is my only except your hands are tied, your legs are tied, your mouth is shut. That's the only time you don't have a choice because you can't move. You're captivated. But when even when someone has a gun to your head, you have a choice. But the choice you make is influenced by, the gun to your head, because you either don't want to get shot, so you make the choice, but you made the choice. You have to tell yourself, I made that choice because I didn't want to get shot. That's another story. But you have a choice. So the reason why people allow things is, one, they don't believe they have a choice. That's why you hear people say, I didn't have a choice. They forced it on me. They didn't force it on you. They told you. They probably gave you an ultimatum, but you chose to go a route that felt comfortable for you. So if, for example, if you don't do this, you would get fired. Because you don't want to get fired, you chose it. So the way you I remember I said you have to get comfortable, one, with how people would respond. And you also have to learn to get comfortable with your choices. If you do say, I'm going to communicate that, oh, this is more than what you have given me, you have to be ready with the response you're going to get. If they tell you it's insubordination, that's what they told you. Do you now want to not, stick to what you said and not do the work and sit with the insubordination? Now is being, if someone tells you, oh, you're not, it's like name calling and pushback. So now, how do you respond to this? Do you want to go against that? Is it that you're feeling guilty? So I don't want to be seen as someone who's insubordinate, so I'm just going to take it. You chose it. If that's your choice, then you sit with it. I can't tell you it's a right or a wrong choice. Ask yourself, how does that feel with you? And the thing about boundary again is the fear of the reaction. If I do this, what would they do? What would they say? They may fire me. They may say I'm unserious. They will do those things. What do you want then? Do you want to sit with the name calling and do the tasks, maybe because you're getting paid from it and it's funding your lifestyle? That's a choice. And I wouldn't even say that's a wrong choice, because at that point, your priority might be your finances, but you have to just sit with it. You have made a decision, you sit with it. If your priority is, I don't want to be worked, I don't want to overwork, and whatever comes with it, you're willing to take it, that's another choice you sit with. So you have to be able to tell yourself, it's a choice. I made it and I would sit with it. I know, like she said, people saying yes, man, yes, sir. That is I don't know if I'll say it's a Nigerian thing, but where, oh yes, they don't even question anything. So being in an environment with that kind of person, it will now make you look like you're the one that has a
You
problem.
look the odd,
You're the odd
yes.
one. You're the
Mm,
unserious one. You're the one that always likes to
mm,
challenge. So
mm.
again, what choice do you want to make? Whatever choice you make, we don't tell you do this or do
Yes.
that. I can't tell you what to do. But just know that whatever choice you make, you have to sit with whatever comes with it.
Mm, love it. Again, I hope, Ufa, I hope that that answers your question. One last question here, and I'll give you my last one as we wrap up. Um, that one game master says, question, can a best friend relationship be broken?
Any relationship can be broken. Any relationship can be broken. I don't know if there's more context to this question. Relationships
Exactly.
come, relationships go. I think, let me say something a little bit about this. When it comes to terminating relationship, I always say that should always be the last resort. On the internet we hear, oh, this person did this to you, cut them off. I believe, for me, the only relationship, not only, but one relationship that I would say, okay, yes, you might not even need to communicate, or there are I'm not a fan of ghosting, but there are relationships like physical abuse. There's no sort of explanation. I'm not going to have a conversation with you to tell you it's a danger, it's a threat to my life. I will take myself out of that relationship. However, when it comes to broken relationships, I believe that there are you know, other options to take before thinking, oh, let me terminate this relationship. Have you communicated? Lots of times we don't pride, let's say, we don't want to talk about what the issue is. We feel the person will just understand, so we don't even talk about the issue. And then we just rather, you know what, let's just end the relationship. So yes, relationships can be broken, even those your best friend, even family. We have, estranged families. When people say blood is thicker than water, there are people who don't even believe that. Because if they are in, a very, very toxic family relationship, some people make the choice to just, take themselves out of it, and it's broken. So when it comes to relationship, I always say try to make terminating the relationship the last resort after you have done, other options that
All the things
you
that
can
you
do.
can.
Yes. Yeah.
Right, right. Honestly, yeah, I agree with you. And I think again, like you said, it boils down to the choices you make, because I've seen scenarios where one party is constantly asking or constantly trying to, what's going on? Can we fix this? When it becomes one-sided, it gets to a point where you're like, you have to make a choice. Like, you know what? I can either, take this for what it is. It's broken. It's okay. And just move on, with your life, or you want to keep trying to see if they will come around. But I really love this part of choice that you've just established. And it brings us, just circles us back to the very beginning of when you said boundaries. It's not about the other person, it's about you. It's about the way you want to show up, right? And so that brings back the whole responsibility to you and the choices to you, whether you want to remain in that, situation where you are either building healthy boundaries or you are leaving or breaking your own boundaries, is still a choice that you're making. So you have to take responsibility and make the right choice for you per time. Now, as I wrap up this session, I want to ask you, I know you've said a lot and I think you've dropped a lot of gems, just like somebody said earlier on. But if you could leave our listeners and our viewers today with just one golden rule for setting boundaries that support a purposeful, empowered life, what would that one golden rule be? If there is one golden rule, there is.
Learn yourself, know yourself. I think that's the most important thing. The saying, you cannot pour from an empty cup. You can't give what you don't have. So when it comes to relationships with people, the way you can show up fully is if you're even showing up fully for yourself. So the simple golden rule is to learn yourself. And I say learn because you are going to be growing. Tomorrow is going to be different from today. So if you wake up tomorrow and things feel different from what yesterday was, learn that new you, so that when you're showing up in that relationship tomorrow, you're showing up as what you have learned about the tomorrow you. So constantly long to know yourself. That's what I would say.
That is so beautiful. Like nothing beats that. Nothing at all beats that, because I feel like when you master that art of learning yourself, you give grace to other people, and then you can even be there to show, like, see, this is what it is. Because when you learn yourself, it means you also learn to communicate how you're evolving with the stakeholders in your life. And if you're able to do that, you start to become like, yeah, like a model that they can just follow. Like, so this is who I am today. Yesterday I just learned this thing about myself. I was at an event earlier this week, I think. Oh no, this is a new week, last week, right? And I was like, oh, I think I'm learning something. I mean, I'm fully energetic, that's the given, but everything. But I learned, about myself, like going to an event like that, going alone, it's not the best for me. Like,
Mm,
because I kind of feed off people's energy as well. So going with somebody who I can exchange, excitement with, or to say, "Oh my God, did you see that? Oh my God, did you hear what he said?" That keeps me going and keeps my energy, like, it elongates my energy. But doing it alone, I like, okay, I think I've seen everything. I'm bored. I'm tired. I want to get out of here, right? That's something I learned, while at that event last week. So now I know that the next major event I'm going to drag somebody with
with
me. I
someone.
will have that, I will have that conversation like, hey, you're coming to spark my energy. Okay, I spark yours, you spark mine, and I think that is so beautiful. Thank you so much, Anna, for sharing today, and thank you for holding the fort while my my system went off for a bit. I really appreciate your patience and your sharing as well. Would there be any final thing you would like to say before we leave today? Also, maybe you want to plug in how can people connect with you and the work that you do to help people build their confidence.
Okay, let me first of all start by thanking you as well. It has been such an honor, privilege to have this conversation with you. You are such a wonderful host. I love how you carry the conversation. Honestly, I thank you to every single person that joined today and for your, interactions in the comment section. I felt very loved. Thank you so much. Yeah, where to find me? So, on Instagram it's thoughts and words underscore by Anna. So I put up posts, videos on building healthy relationship with yourself and people around you. That's my main focus. I also have a weekly podcast. It's called Thursday Talks with Anna. So I release episodes every Thursday. We're actually in season 2, but we're coming to an end, I think, in the next 4 or 5 weeks. So before we dive into season 3, so those are my two main platforms. So my podcast, it's available on both Apple Podcasts and Spotify. I dive into any topic surrounding self-love, growth, and having a healthy relationship. So yeah, those are the two places you can find me.
Awesome. By
LinkedIn
the
as
way, I
well.
yeah,
LinkedIn
by the
as
way, I
well.
checked out your website. Mwah. Love it. Well done.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you, everyone who showed up for Anna today. You guys are amazing. Yes, your show of love is well appreciated. Thank you for also, checking us out on Your Voice, Your Impact. If you're yet to subscribe to our channel, please do so because we have loads and loads of valuable conversations that we've had. By the way, we turned 2 last week. We turned 2 years old
Ah.
last week, Thursday, 19th of June. We started this journey 2 years ago, myself and Gracie. And yes, it's been an amazing journey for us. We started it for us, but now we've been able to help other people, be a platform where people can share their voices. So if you know you also have a message that you want to share and you're looking for a platform to do that, please, you're welcome. Reach out to us to be our guest on the show. This is the energetic EJ. This has been a very fantastic conversation. Remember, boundaries are not about putting up walls, it's about communicating your values and also allowing the stakeholders in your life communicate their values in such a way that you can respect each other's values and live within the confines of those values for healthy relationships. All right. So keep building healthy boundaries and keep knowing yourself because you are the source, you are the center of it all. If you know yourself, then you're able to relate with other people better. Thank you so much. And we'll talk to you next week on the show. Bye bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.